Okay then, so here we are. Printer's all finished, all built, ready to go. Have been running it for probably about a week or so now, maybe a little bit more, maybe closer to 2 actually. And so far I'm really pleased with it, really impressed with the way it's printing, very happy with the quality. First thing I printed was this lovely on-air sign, so I'm quite pleased with that. If you like that, I'll link to that in the description. Guy called Duke Docs on YouTube did a fantastic tutorial about how to make that thing through Fusion 360 and then to print it all out. Really good. Anyway, so a few bits and pieces that we've done on the printer. We obviously made a couple of changes as part of the build, as you know. So we put the new extruder on and we put the BL Touch auto bed leveling. Auto bed leveling is a bit of a misnomer actually. It doesn't level the bed at all. What it does, it creates a sort of software mesh as it probes the bed, so it understands any kind of fluctuations in the bed surface and it then accounts for those as part of the print. So it doesn't actually level your bed. You still do have to level the bed manually, and that's a really important thing to do. Anyway, so we've done all of that. That also included the gold bed leveling springs. Lots of comments on all of the Facebook groups about making sure you level the bed properly, and one of the best ways to do that is to upgrade those springs. You can buy them separately. I'm sure they're pretty cheap, but they came as part of the kit that I bought with the extruder, the Capricorn tubing, and the springs. Other changes I've made, obviously I've moved the control panel over to the left hand side. As you can see from where the printer sits on my desk, it makes sense for me to do that. It would have been a pain to get it at the other side, so I've moved that across. If you want to do that as well, again, I'll link to the piece that I printed out for that. Really simple print, prints really nicely, fits perfectly. You do have to do a little bit of filing on it just to make sure that it fits nicely, but it's not a big job. It only takes a few minutes. As part of the BL Touch install, you do have to update the firmware on the printer. I chose to use non-standard firmware, so there is a Creality firmware version that has the BL Touch compatibility built in, but a lot of people on the Facebook groups are recommending the Giles firmware, so I've installed that, and so far I'm really happy with it. It's very similar, I guess, to the original. It's a fork of a branch of Marlin, which is the normal firmware that these things run on, but the guy that does this particular fork has done a lot of tweaks and changes to the Merlin firmware, and it runs the printer really nicely. The bed leveling works really well, and it provides more options than the stock Creality version would. He also provides an update for the user interface on the control panel as well, which gives you new icons and a better layout. So definitely worth looking at doing that, I think, as well. If you're in the market for one of these. So who would be in the market for one of these? I mean, obviously I'm into RC hobby, which I guess many of you viewers are as well, because a lot of my subscribers are here for either the drone content or the car content. So this is a bit of an unusual video, but I think it works, and in terms of linking that back to the hobbies that we're all interested in, there's lots and lots of uses for 3D printing in those hobbies. Obviously with the drone stuff, as you can see from the ones in the background, a lot of those have got many 3D printed parts on them already. The cars similarly, maybe not so much, probably more useful for printing scale parts and bits and pieces, but if you're really getting into sort of tweaks and changes to the trucks and you want to try things out before you invest in having parts made, certainly 3D printing, that's one of the beauties of 3D printing, that sort of fast prototyping that you can do, and the iterative design that you can do as well for very minimal cost. So talking of cost, I think all in, I've spent about £330 in total on this. That's a little higher than the original price I spoke about before, because since buying that I have bought a PEI magnetic bed for it as well, or magnetic build surface, so that just pops off the magnet. It's flexible, so the prints just pop off it. You don't have to wait for them to release themselves as they cool down, although you should still do that a little bit anyway, because obviously while they're hot they're still soft. I was having some problems with the original bed that came, or the build surface that came with it. I was having some adhesion issues, and I think that's because there's a faulty batch out there. So the one that I had a very matte finish to it, which it shouldn't have had. It should have had a very gloss finish. So I'm pretty sure that was the problem. And it started out okay. The first few prints were fine, but then very, very quickly they started to fail. So I'd had a previous PEI sheet on the old printer, and I'd had great results with it. Creality do their own PEI sheet for this printer, so that sort of suggests to me as well that they think that's probably not a bad idea. So would I do the same again if I bought another one, or would I leave it stock? I would definitely do the same again. The bed build surface is much better, I think. The BL Touch is very convenient. It just means that you're not forever having to re-level the bed, because it will account for any issues. You should do it occasionally anyway. But it just means that most of the time you can just crack on with your printing, which is great. The metal extruder and the Capricorn tubing, I think certainly the extruder is an absolute must. I'm constantly seeing, pretty much every day on the Facebook group for the Ender3 V2, somebody saying, oh well, that didn't last long, and there's a picture of a broken extruder arm. So absolutely get one of those for the sake of the extra 20 or 30 pounds that you pay. The other thing that I have printed is this little guide, and that just helps the filament guide into the extruder. You probably don't need to do that. I just prefer it. It's kind of pulling on a wheel on a bearing rather than pulling directly on the extruder. So I think that's probably going to be better. But yeah, all in all, very, very pleased with it. It's a smaller footprint than my old printer. It's a bigger build surface than my old printer, and the quality is absolutely better. The one drawback I've found with it so far is the noise. So it's billed as having a silent motherboard and a silent stepper motors, which it has. They are very, very quiet. But the fans that they've put on this thing are ridiculously loud. I haven't switched the printer on as part of this video for that very reason. They are really, really loud. Are they louder than other printers? I don't know. But my old one, I had got some silent fans on there, and you know, there is a significant difference in the noise. I may have to upgrade some of those. I would rather not. I wanted to try and keep this as standard as possible, but I may have to do some upgrades there, particularly around the hot end fan, which is the one that runs constantly. As soon as the printer's switched on, that hot end fan is running, and it is quite loud, and possibly the power supply fan as well, because that's quite loud when that kicks in. Need to do some research on that though. There's lots of different options out there. There are some really quiet fans. Noctua is a really quiet fan, but the trouble with the quieter fans is the cooling output is not as high, is not as good. There's not as much airflow through, so it's a bit of a trade-off. So I need to do some research on that. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about which ones to go for, so I'll do some research on those, and I'll update you guys if I do choose to change that further down the line. But for now, I think that's enough. Should you buy one, if you're in the market for a 3D printer and you don't want to spend the thick end of £1,000 on a Prusa, this is a great printer. There's a huge amount of support for it out there in the community. There's lots and lots of people that will say, keep it stock, it's perfect stock, or you know, upgrade it to your heart's content. You know, so there's a whole wide range of opinions out there, but fundamentally they all say it's a pretty good printer, and certainly for the money I think it's a great printer. So I'm really pleased with it. So with that, I will leave you with some video of the printer running when it was printing the sign, so you can see it up close. I will leave some of the sound on that so that you can hear it as well, and make your own judgment. Of course, that is coming through a camera, so you're going to have to take that with a pinch of salt. But that's it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Before we go, I'd just like to thank everybody that's subscribed so far. We have gone through the 500 subscriber mark in the last week, and I'm really pleased with that. Never thought we'd get there. So thank you very much for those of you who've subscribed already. If you haven't, please consider doing so. And if you enjoyed this content, you found it useful, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one.